great nations, first, before becoming great, they are someone's dream. They're always dreamers, poets maybe, but idealists who dream of big things. And so therefore, first there's this dream, and then the nation, if it's lucky, gets close to the dream.
On to the big story that we are tracking on IIIornered this hour, where Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has reportedly tested positive for COVID-19.
In Pakistan, Prime Minister Imran Khan tests positive for COVID-19.
You became elected Prime Minister of Pakistan 2018, and you had crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis, but none as big as the Corona crisis, which has basically decimated economies of first world countries, infected millions, killed almost 250,000 people in America have died. Yet I've been here 5 months and I'm focusing on the trajectory of Corona. It's just incredible that two neighbors, India and Iran, you look at their numbers, you look at their result, and you look at Pakistan's result. How were you able to, and your team, able to control Corona?
The crisis was just too huge. So we had a very hostile neighbor. We had a huge economic crisis. And then on top of it, just as we were looking to come out of it, there was Corona. Remember, what COVID has done is, it's hit the poorer countries the most, and the poor in all countries the most. Even in rich countries, the poor have been affected. But how we got away, I feel that there was this fundamental decision to be made. And I got heavily criticized for 2 months for the decision.
It is the job, Mr. Speaker, of the Prime Minister to lead. Ye kaam mere liye ya aapke liye nahi hai. The Prime Minister is supposed to lead this nation. The people want to know what our Prime Minister will do to lead this nation. At the moment, he's just our ruler. He's not Pakistan's leader. They say that Nero fiddled while Rome burned. We asked Mr. Speaker, what is our Prime Minister doing while Pakistan burns?
I did not want to do a complete lockdown. 80% of the labor is non-formal. You have daily wages, you have weekly wages, their families depend on their earning.
The vision and the primary ask set by the leadership, by the Prime Minister, was that, look, find me, he said very clearly, find me the path which will help us save our people from the disease, from its devastating effects, from the deaths it will cause, but yet allowing for life to continue so that people have a livelihood. I would say in peacetime, in non-epidemic time would be something, but during an epidemic, to build this during an epidemic was something that I think there are plenty of unsung heroes who made this happen.
Strict lockdown when you have such high levels of poverty and daily wages was never going to be observed. Means no lockdown. So it doesn't matter if the rich people lock themselves down, but if at the bottom it's impossible for them to lock themselves down. That means that whenever you open up, the virus will be spreading amongst them. When you open up, it'll spread everywhere, which is what happened in India.
We were not prepared. As a country, we were not prepared.
This is India over the last 24 hours. Another wave of coronavirus seeping through it.
Fear often produces a sheltering reflex. Fear leads people to say, let's hunker down behind our own barriers. And so putting up your borders is a normal human reaction on the part of many states. It's actually terrible because it's also accompanied by xenophobia. You can blame everything on people who are not like you, on the other.
One thing that we must understand about COVID-19 is that borders do not count. Already we see hundreds of thousands of people are dying or getting infected. Already millions are infected.
So, Prime Minister, this amazing, this saving lives and livelihoods, precision restrictions that you put in place, which kept the economy going, stemming the pandemic, can these policies be applicable elsewhere in the world?
You see, what I would have done is that I would have isolated certain groups, not the whole economy. Remember, we had a young population which also helped us. But at the same time, our healthcare compared to the Europeans and the United States was non-existent almost, if you compare the two.
Heck, if we had run it as well as Pakistan ran the response, we would have saved in the neighborhood of $10 trillion.
So we decided that if we locked, now here was the dilemma, if we locked down the economy, people will starve here. If we opened it up and then it spread, we would not have the health care to cope with the influx. So we decided that we would just isolate little areas and stop gatherings where it was possible, but open up factories, construction. And fortunately, it worked for us. In our countries, like in India, they have crushed the poor people because India went for a complete lockdown.
COVID-19 has indeed shown that viruses are no respecters of national boundaries, of religious identities, of languages, ethnicities, anything. But paradoxically, Salman, I would counter-argue that COVID-19 has actually inaugurated an era of deglobalization. That is, when the pandemic broke out, it seemed to confirm for many that in times of crisis, people actually rely on their own governments to shield them.
So fortunately, we saved our people, and also we had this SARS program where we gave cash handouts to, almost 15 million people, the families. And that really saved us from the worst impact of the fallout.
This disease ought to have brought focus to the global leadership on how crucially important health is. It has the opportunity of disrupting every progress you've made. You've seen what has happened to economies in the entire world. So, you may not have COVID around 2 years from now, but you will certainly have to think of the next epidemic and how it impacts in life in general.
Now I feel that we have become victims of centrifugal forces. We're in our nationalistic kind of barricades. We will not be able to conquer a pandemic unless we believe we're all in it together. This is not some age of Aquarius or kumbaya statement. This is what a pandemic forces us to realize. We are all in it together. We need a global solution to a global problem. Anything less than that is unthinkable.
Prime Minister, all of the noise that the opposition is making, it can be defeated if your government actually showed results in terms of economy and for it to trickle down to the man in the street. I drove with my son from Lahore, and along the way, I have to tell you, things are really, really bad for the poor people. How can the PTI government give relief to the poor who are suffering?
First, look at the economy inherited by us 2 years back. The biggest current account deficit. In other words, the dollars going out were far greater than the dollars coming in. So $20 billion deficit. When PMLN came in, it was $2.5 billion deficit. We had 20. Which meant that the debt servicing, to service that debt, we had to pay $10 billion for debt servicing, unprecedented in Pakistan. In 2 years, we have paid back $20 billion debt. And then the other deficit is fiscal deficit. So we inherited the biggest fiscal deficit in our history. So the total tax we collected in the first year, half of it went into servicing the debts. So just imagine a house. If the house is suddenly lumbered with debts, people coming asking for their money, the grocer coming, someone coming for rent, someone asking, you have to pay for your car, the installments. So this is what was happening to us. So what does that house do? It cuts down its expenditures. So you are cutting down, maybe if you have a meat 4 times a week, you cut it down to maybe once, maybe you cut down. So when you cut down your expenditure, it's painful. Any society, when it is lumbered with such huge imbalances, it's going to go through a difficult time until you raise your revenues. When you cut down your expenditure, till you raise your revenues, you are going to go through a difficult time. This is what happened. Today, Pakistan right now, as we speak today, despite COVID, today we have, after 17 years, our current account deficit is in a surplus. After 17 years, in the last quarter, we have actually managed to get a slight surplus in the current account. In other words, more dollars coming in than going out, which means our rupee is now appreciating, which means confidence in our stock market, which is now one of the best performing stock markets. And secondly, we have started incentivizing the industry to create wealth. Today, our construction is booming. We have record cement sales. We have today that our textile industry is now completely working at full capacity. In Faisalabad right now, people can't you can't find labor for the jobs. So this is, despite COVID, Pakistan is going in the right direction. Now, problem we had is with 2 areas. One was wheat and the other one was sugar. The main reason is wheat. Because of climate change, we had 2 bad wheat crops. And because of poor wheat crops, we had to import wheat. Now, unfortunately, there's a supply shortage of edibles all over the world, and the prices have gone up. So the wheat which we are importing is expensive. It's probably the record high prices. So therefore, people are suffering temporarily because of the high prices. But apart from that, our construction is booming right now. Employment, there are more and more people getting employed. Our agriculture, in other words, the money going into agriculture has gone up. So we are in the right direction. And we have come out of one of the worst situations, one of the worst situation any government has ever inherited.
Prime Minister, since I've known you from the beginning, your mantra has been accountability, accountability, accountability. You were able to galvanize a huge force of young people who then became your voters and who continue, might not be so young now, but they believe in you because you believe in accountability across the board. What will it take to build across the board accountability and hold people who have, stolen, rich people who have stolen from Pakistan?
Well, first of all, countries are poor not because they lack resources. They're poor because they have the ruling elite looting, stealing from the country. So when a prime minister and his ministers steal from a country, they actually destroy the whole country. Because what they do is they can only steal by destroying the state institutions that prevents them from stealing. So all the checks and balances, like your revenue department, your tax collecting FBR in Pakistan, or your accountability bureau, or your judiciary, all the institutions that should stop people from stealing, first they have to destroy them, otherwise they would be caught. So by destroying the state institutions, they open the floodgates for corruption. And so the countries get impoverished. They are never able to collect enough revenues to fund their expenditure, so they go into debt. Classic case is Malaysia. Under Mahathir Mohamad, Malaysia rose up and became a middle income group. People from Pakistan, labor was going to work in Malaysia. It had reserves, it changed from a commodity exporting country into electronics and so on. Under Mahathir Mohamad, he left. A prime minister came who started doing exactly, what our two families have done in Pakistan. They started money laundering, taking money out of Malaysia. When he left, that same Malaysia under Mahathir, which was prospering and had reserves and was a rich country, a relatively rich country in this area, that became an indebted country.
Apparently, things that we have done quite well in Malaysia, and he does not see why Pakistan cannot do the same. So he is trying to develop Pakistan and have a good system of government. Unfortunately, of course, he does not get full support. There are other people who are always trying to bring him down. But I hope that he continues to remain as Prime Minister of Pakistan, and he should try, of course, and this he has pledged that he wants to develop Pakistan so that it can become one of the developed countries.
So, number one, you cannot prosper as a country if your leadership is crooked. Number two, you can only prosper if you have clean governance, and you can only have clean governance if you have accountability process that holds the leadership accountable, not the poor people. Never has there been any accountability which is successful if you just have low-level officers held accountable. The main corruption takes place with the Prime Minister and the ministers. Unless they are held accountable, a country cannot have clean governance. So therefore now we are in the process that these guys, these two families who have been in power for 30 years, who've taken out billions of dollars from this country, impoverished us. They've signed power contracts which are almost, the kickbacks range from 25 to 30%, which means our electricity is 25% more expensive than Bangladesh or India because of their kickbacks. And that's just one aspect. So unless we hold them accountable, there will never be a deterrent in Pakistan of coming into politics and then making money. Only if you hold them accountable can you move forward. And so there's this big struggle going on in the country. All these crooks have ganged up, and they want to blackmail me for me to give them immunity from their corruption cases. And they're threatening me that if I don't do this, then they will topple the government. And so this is now a test of wills. And in my opinion, this will decide once these crooks are brought to justice, once you establish rule of law, then that's when Pakistan will change forever.
I think we believe in the same thing. We believe in good governance. We believe in developing our country. We believe in not having any violence in our own country or anywhere else. We believe that the duty of a Prime Minister is to lead his country towards greater achievement, to become a developed country.
जजों से जोर जबरदस्ती के फैसले आपने लिखवाए।
चीफ ऑफ आर्मी स्टाफ तशरीफ लाए, पैर कांप रहे थे, पसीने माथे पे थे। फॉरेन मिनिस्टर साहब ने कहा कि खुदा का वास्ता है अब इसको वापस जाने दें।
For Ayaz Sadiq to lie like that and Nawaz Sharif, basically this Nawaz Sharif is in a desperate situation. What he is basically trying to do, he is trying everything to put pressure on us, on me, to blackmail me, to give him immunity from his corruption cases. And this is his final card where he's actually hitting out at the army chief and the ISI chief, because this election 80% of Pakistanis thought this was a free and fair election.
Leading voices in the opposition in Pakistan demanding early elections and an end to Imran Khan's government. And I ask you, what credibility do you think you have with the Pakistani
I think
people?
what credibility Imran Khan government has. The world has witnessed that it was a stolen election. It was a rigged election. It's not we are saying. We have experienced. All pre-poll 2018 surveys indicate the PMLN will win. But the observers, the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, the dirtiest election. Everybody knows the election has been stolen
The final
from
and
us.
ultimate conclusion was that they believed the result was credible, that Imran Khan's election victory in 2018 was credible. That was the conclusion of the EU report.
Prime Minister Imran Khan has proved the legitimacy of his government by winning the vote of confidence with 178 votes.
Imran Khan has obtained the vote of confidence from the National Assembly and commands the confidence of the majority of the members of the National Assembly as Prime Minister of Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
During Pakistan's 75th year of independence, the struggle for democracy continues to rage on in the streets, on TV, social media, and in Parliament. Like a cornered tiger, Prime Minister Imran Khan continues to fight back. If he defeats his enemies, he will become the first Pakistani leader to complete 5 years in office.
Inshallah, inshallah. Inshallah, inshallah,
has obtained the vote of confidence from the National Assembly and commands the confidence of the majority of the members of the
Pakistan, insaf ki awaaz uthe, zulm ki दीवार गिरे, हक बातिल पे हो छाया, हाथ उठाकर मांग इंशाल्लाह नया Pakistan. Inshallah, inshallah, Naya Pakistan, Naya Pakistan, Naya Pakistan, Naya Pakistan. इंसाफ की आवाज उठे, जुल्म की दीवार गिरे, हक बातिल पे हो छाया, हाथ उठाकर मांग इंशाल्लाह नया Pakistan, inshallah, inshallah.